just pure chaos right now in such a small community. The craziest things are happening. We'll have to talk about it another time. I know you'll find it crazy. But nice to be back for another POB happy hour.
Yep.
Are you guys hearing me loud and clear? I can hear you guys loud and clear. Looks like we're all good. Um,
Yeah,
awesome to be back for another 60 minutes. YouTube. Sorry, what was that?
here's a link. I just sent it to you.
Perfect. I'll get that out on Twitter, and we're cruising. Let me see here. Sorry if you guys can hear some noise in the background.
It's okay.
Awesome. All right.
Okay, I'm noticing I'm having some Twitter. We're cruising. Right on, guys. So it looks like we're set up. Everything is good on YouTube from what I can tell. Let me see here.
Mhm.
Well, right on, guys. Anybody want to kick this off and maybe talk about some of the things you're working on during the week? What you guys have been up to?
Yeah.
This
So
week, yeah, it's been a little slow. Yeah, I've been kind of slowly building ABF. Slowly being the key word here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's for me been rather an uneventful, just grinding, a slow grinding week, trying to get
Well,
energy back.
we had a
And
good
yeah,
conversation before this call. Me and Davis. You know, we didn't
yeah,
do it. Yeah, we didn't sleep early this week, so we needed it. I
Yep.
think we're pretty excited about ABF, so we're just trying to brainstorm what the my kid how to, you know, call it a level of success. So,
yeah.
So you guys feel like ABF is
I
moving
mean,
along?
your microphone's a little low. Let me turn it up. But
Oh, sorry, man. I actually just
yeah,
adjusted it. I'll turn it up.
yeah. I was wondering what you think, Bit, like the aspect of it, or if you have any thoughts brewing.
Well, with regard to ABF, I mean, it kind of all depends on the tooling. I know we've talked about doing more of like an intriguing mystery based tool, and then we've also talked about doing more of a art blocksy general place for people to mint their ABF art. And so, like, I feel like there's two different ways to build that community, right? You can build the community around the intrigue and around the excitement of the mystery, or you can build the community around the accessibility that, like, you don't have to go through that shroud of mystery in order to use the platform. You can kind of just jump right in and start learning, and it becomes more. Uh, I guess it becomes less mysterious and just more pragmatic. Like people are going to have to really take practical steps to ensure that they're able to even use ABF because of the nature of it. So community building can be done a few different ways. For us, I think if we did go the art blocks route, because of the general nature of that, I think we have the opportunity to maybe build a bigger community around the project, where being more mysterious is obviously a bit more niche, right? Which isn't a bad thing either. It's just one of the other directions that whenever you build something that's a bit more niche, it's a little bit harder to get it into the general mind share anywhere in any industry, right? Um, in our case,
Yeah,
I think that ABF has some real crypto-y uh, elements to it that I think would kind of fit within some of the mind share. And then you also have a lot of people who are not very technical and maybe don't completely understand what an NFT is and maybe don't understand all the different details around that. And maybe they'd be less intrigued by the idea of building with Brainfuck because they might not understand that we're basically running if I'm correct, Dave, isn't it like you're running Brainfuck within Solidity,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so there's a level of complexity to this But there really doesn't need to be. Like, I don't think you truly have to understand it at depth to be able to use it. I know I certainly don't have that depth of understanding, but I realize how maybe it could be a hurdle. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was what we were discussing before. It's like there's a couple aspects. It's like one, just a base, like part of it, I like that, just doing the bare minimum to explain things, and then two is like the audience is very. It's like we're looking like towards engineers, like people who are aware of like kind of circle of things, and um, just appealing to those people, and then so is one, you have to reach those people. That's the difficult part, and then two, how do you actually convince them that this is like people who understand brainfuck may instantly get it, why this is cool, who are aware of the language or in that like world of things. But for people who may not be aware of that, that's also a question for ourselves. Is like, how do we get them excited around like the other components?
Right, right.
Well,
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
I keep on coming back to this point, and I feel like this is something I'm going to hammer in perpetuity. Is we don't need a lot of people. I genuinely believe it because, like, there's going to be two user bases for ABF. There's going to be its core like people issuing art on it. There's obviously the more consumer side.
Which comes later. Also, we should note that.
Which
In the
comes
beginning,
later.
Yeah, the consumer part.
In the beginning, but like I thought about it was just like, well, say in the beginning there's only a few of us kind of building things on the platform, which if you were to make an argument to say most generative art platforms start like that with a few super users, but we get the standing benefit that in our brutalism approach of building ABF, like I thought it was like we could totally create a Edo styled UI where we pretty much make it literally a one-on-one pixel art generator, and then the brainfuck part is just a glue to the whole system, or to a degree, and pretty much lower that ceiling so much for those user bases, right? Like it's the more I think about the project, the more it just has so many more paths that I keep on thinking about.
That's good,
right? Like,
yeah. But you can't,
right, and
you can't necessarily onset, right? You have to see what happens.
Yeah, so I mean, right now it's just like we're getting to a point where we have a fairly unopinionated tool, like that we're trying to get to, that like makes no implications on supply, on what you intend to do with it. But with that in mind, like, I don't think anybody has yet written an NFT with brainfuck. I haven't, certainly. Like I haven't even really properly used it, and it's hard. It's gonna be very informative when I even do that and learn a little bit.
Doing editions in the same way people have like one-on-one Tezos, but then they do like multiple editions of it. Like I could see that happening too.
Yeah, and like say like the one-on-one behavior really becomes its predominant behavior choice, then like we certainly can modify future brainfuck NFT the contract level to make it more gas efficient to do one-on-ones, but like right now it just doesn't have an opinion of direction.
This is also like if we're saying that we only need a very few number of people, then it's also going to be, I don't know, I would say a little bit difficult to know how clear the signal is for any particular.
Yeah, like it's like
because it's possible the early user base largely are unopinionated themselves too and don't.
Yeah, so that's where I really do value the first core people that we even as a studio can actively have conversations about. It's like, hey, what are you thinking about playing around with? What are we playing around with, right? Like, and certainly, hopefully, there's direction that comes out of that.
Right.
But it's just like I feel like ABF can be so flavored by different interpretations of the project. Like it can totally have a very strong 8BitDo style art community um, around the project, which could be its own little vibrant little corner of the world, and then there could be very demanding generative art versions, and then predicated upon that somebody builds like even like a PFP style generator where you can like use a UI to select like layers and then put these, and then it would randomly generate a layered piece of art. Like if there's even a standard UI for you to do that, like that opens the door for like CryptoPunk styled pieces without writing a line of brainfuck, right? Like that could even spawn its own subcategory of projects. And then there could just be one of ones created by generative artists that are incredibly crazy, right? Like the flavors are really going to be interesting. Now, frankly, I don't have a personal preference of which flavor comes to form. I feel like a matter of if we can support a little bit of each for now. I think the 8BitDo version can really thrive because it's like a very low hanging ceiling design. It's just like 64 pixels, right? And you interpret that as such. And then you got the more bespoke versions, but like, yeah, like, yeah, I keep on coming back. We need to dog food the system. We need to use it, play with it, break it, and yeah, and we need to do it with external people ourselves. See where the system wants to go. Like I feel like ABF is so hyperstructured. It feels like it can have its own identity. Like it can be so easily imprinted by people and given a direction to go. And I feel like more than any other project we've ever built, I want to embrace that more. Like I think Hash, to a degree, had so much of its rarity mechanics, like not strictly imbued by myself, but imbued by its community. Like they found ways to make it rare. And so I think what Proof of Beauty did a great job when it comes to Hash is we kind of allowed it to kind of all grow. We didn't really say, hey, that's actually not in fact rare. I was like, no, you guys figured out, Saga's composition system could only produce this very specific looking artwork 1 out of 2,000 chances, right? Like and they found rarity out of what we didn't know there was rarity, right? But then that calls into question, like like what is the go-to-market? When the go-to-market communities can have so many different variants of go-to-market, right? You would, in the very beginning, we have to get the first super users, and then later you'll be like, okay, we need to start getting the product of these super users out to the consumers, and then if that has a certain flywheel, right? Like, yeah, exactly. They're just the calculus in my head is just like combusting. Like it's just like,
yeah,
and that's where I've been a little bit like, we may have to cut down on the intrigue parts,
Right.
which makes
to
sense.
go a little bit more pragmatic because we need to. It's one of those projects where, like, especially if I were to compare it to like Reaper, this project feels like it really is like it's like a mirror. It needs people to be reflected upon. Where I feel like, well, like Reaper feels like a series is almost episodic, where it feels like you really feel the director, right, the touch of the creative, and ABF feels like the complete inverse. And I'm trying to piece together the plan. Yeah.
Actually, I think with the projects in queue right now, very interesting universe for ourselves and an identity.
Yeah.
The question right now is like, is honestly the go to market is a little bit weird. Maybe we should just think about. It's kind of like the stylistic part of it, right? The aesthetic, the community, think of the how you display your project, not just from the like website standpoint, but like communication, all that stuff. Like how important is that?
100%.
Like we need to really think of, yeah. I don't think we haven't fully like mastered that skill set yet. So we have a lot to learn.
And I'm like thinking about this. It's like both Reaper and ABF, like they're gonna be going into the market with no like this is the NFT, like this is the visual touch of it. Like Hash goes out, any PFP project, you know what it looks visually, right? Like ABF goes out, it needs collections at the beginning, but those collections don't manifest in that this is the ABF brand, right? Like they're the production of the ABF system. And like Reaper starts out mysterious to a degree, and maybe it does have a visual brand language for its NFTs. But we're gonna have to work on the the uphill climb, right? Like compared to like London Gift. When London Gift came out, it's like the gift visual became synonymous with the London brand, right? Like those
Right.
two came so strongly together. Where
Mm-hmm.
ABF may not be able to make that step. It probably will in a very organic way that I probably won't ever anticipate, because maybe there is a collection that just becomes its squiggles or whatever. It becomes its like Fidenza, and that's like if you think of art blocks, you think of a Fidenza, right? I think it may have one specific collection, right, that everybody thinks of, right,
Mm-hmm.
from that world, but that to a degree is still very organic, right? Like I don't think we can forcefully manifest that. So yeah, like it's yeah.
I was kind of thinking about what you were saying before, Ash, about like the go-to market per se, and getting back to also what you said about building like this unique POB universe. And it's actually really exciting to think about how much we can learn from this, because there's really no way to get it right, and because we have so many different product launches lined up, we have the potential to each time do a little better. And the nice thing is about ABF is that it has to kind of grow organically anyways. Like it doesn't even matter how well we launch it. If you can't use it, you can't use it, right? On that note, actually, guys, I'd be curious to talk a bit about what it would take to build. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong on the technical terminology, but like to build like a compiler or a library or something to support the development of ABF art. Would a tool like that be complex to build? Do you guys think that it would be better to follow up with the market to build something like that based on how people are responding to the tool initially? Or is this something that you guys are thinking we might have to start preparing, knowing inevitably that people may need it? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, our tool right now in its current state gets the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly
the tooling can be
it's so I think where where ABF tooling is going to stand, and it feels kind of like a new like strategy game that came out of like a game studio, like or some kind of very complex game, like whatever complex game. And in the very beginning,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just Terraform's editing experience mostly sucks.
But that's a piece of crap of an experience, right? Like,
but people got away with it pretty well. So like, that gives me at least like some.
And like, right, like, dude, let's like, I don't know if you guys were here to see it, but there was actually tools that people built.
Yeah, people built
for Genesis. Like there was like independent websites that people were like using to find very specific attributes, which we didn't build, right? Like tools manifested quite easily, and it was like, it was just like, this is like like beyond the UI, like this is like a good tool. Like it allowed you to look through leading zeros, it allowed you to do this or that, right? Like it allowed you to monitor very specific addresses for notable events, large trends. Like it, I don't know how much time that guy took to build that within our community, but like it wasn't like a startup quality polished product, but like it did the job and then some, right? And it was a very emergent behavior. And because Genesis eventually kind of shut down as a season, I think it kind of neutered that energy, to be honest. But
Hmm.
I feel like what we release is kind of like alpha version of Minecraft. Like you play the game, it's playable, it's fun. But like, could it be more fun? Absolutely. Um, and I think we as a studio will have a very strong responsibility to make it a better game. But like, I think it's gonna also in part be the community that comes in that really learns it. Because like to a degree, like working with such a constrained language like Brainfuck, like it requires a demand of creativity. Like you can't just be like, oh, I want to manifest this output with code and you just do it with JavaScript, right? Like
Yeah.
that like is trivially easy. But then like in this case, you're like, well, I can't just manifest. I have to be creative about it. And that creativity, I think, hopefully will be very sticky for some of its super users, right? And I do see us as a studio feeling responsible to help support that. Like
Hmm.
if say somebody creates a renderer, right, and they're like, well, putting this renderer on chain is going to cost me a lot of gas. Like I'd be happy to say, hey, give me the code, I'll deploy it. The studio will cover the gas fees to get that renderer out and sustain a public good for everybody. Like
Hmm.
I'm not
Well,
opposed to that, but we won't do that for everything. But like I
Hmm.
can see us fostering some of that energy, but um,
maybe we should like we could talk about more about like the thesis of ABF, right? It's like that provide. I always think that provides more focus on like high level.
so what I mean, there. What is the thesis? Like it?
There needs to be one usually, right? With any type of
No, there
any.
isn't. I don't think you don't need one for these kind of projects. The project I think has the right
Well,
grit. It
yeah,
like I
there is a thesis in there. You just have to dig it out. It's there. It's already there, right?
yeah,
Say
actually I see what
Wanda.
you're saying. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying actually. Yeah, yeah. I feel like every conversation I have about AVI just leads me to a really deep sigh and like, good gosh, like what did I accidentally open a can of worms to? But
That's so funny. Yeah.
um, man, it's like it's one of those things where I like all I want to see right now is to see it in the people's hands.
Hmm.
Um, oh, man, but like to get it to there, you gotta
so
think
you gotta
about
get them
marketing, you
excited.
gotta think about
What's the
Discord, right? You gotta think about all the stuff to get to that point. But I just want to see that point right now. Like I'm like,
if
gosh,
you
but
could
like,
talk to like a engineer and like pitch them, like convince them hard in a few sentences, like how do we do that specifically about brain fog, like not
but
Oh, I'd love
again,
to
you
hear
don't
this.
need a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Again, I keep
No,
on
no, no,
coming
yeah,
back to this point.
a lot of
You
people. I'm
don't
saying
even
one
like
person.
convincing.
You're,
If you give me an hour to convince P4 to try this thing out, I think I could do it. Like it,
that's what I'm
the
saying.
thing
Yeah,
that
so one person, P4. If you were to
Shout out
right.
convince,
So
P4.
if that's the point, then like right, if that's the case, right, like it's just like the go to market in my eyes is just like we use it,
no, no,
we
no.
give
I'm
it
not
out
saying
to a
go to
few of the
market.
right
It's like
people.
talking to P4. If you were to convince him, like how would you convince him?
I just say like, dude, the thing is fucking crazy. It's gonna be you creating art with brain and it's gonna be all on chain. Like it's wild.
Hmm.
It's gonna be we don't even know what the hell you're doing, what we're doing here, but like, do you want to be part of this fucking crazy experiment? And I think that there's certainly gonna be a audience of artists that's like, this is weird intellectually. Like I
Hmm.
just kind of want to play with it, right? And all we need of them is to play with it, right? Like because like once you start actually kicking in brainfuck, the people who love enjoy that challenge will fucking love that challenge. Like I kind of felt that energy very
Right.
palpably. But if they don't like it, then like fair play. Like it's not meant for certain. I guess audiences of artists who produce art for the visual sake, and there's certainly some who produce it with a deep love of the act of creation. In this sense, it's a very computationally intensive act of creation. So like, yeah, I feel like there's gonna be people to pitch. There's people that we can reach out to, and I feel like once they start producing the first visuals and they start sharing them or word of mouth like start spreading, we just need that super user base to kind of grow a little bit, right? And And then in the many ways that will be the marketing where people where like P4 or other artists starts tweeting is like this is a thing that I have zero fucking clue why I made in Brainfuck, but I made it. And it's almost appreciating the absurdity of the time you spent, the craziness
Yeah.
of what you just partaked in, and feel like that just energy can fan a fire. Like, but we obviously need to start with the first sparks and fanning it in the very beginning and blowing, getting the oxygen in like that.
Mhm.
Undeniable, right? But then I think where we as a studio really need to start helping in is when we need the consumers to come and start like like consuming the creation that these people are creating. I think that's where we need to step in and say, hey, like let's start creating markets, or let's start making intrigue. Let's take this palpable intellectual energy around challenging yourself as a creator and make it something that
Yeah.
I don't know people want to enjoy
Yeah.
as an
To
NFT, right?
me,
Like it.
consumer side is
Mhm.
probably not going to be that. I'm thinking because if you do create that artist network, that's already the syndication mechanism, basically, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
I wonder if it would be a similar characteristic of people that were interested in like piano that will be interested in ABF to a degree, because piano is so creative, kind of all about creating that one piece, putting it up. That piece isn't going to be around forever, so I
yeah.
guess there's like that different way of approaching it. ABF is a little bit different conceptually. Um, but yeah, it's interesting to think about. I was actually thinking too about the thesis. It almost feels like the thesis, from my perspective, and I'm probably wrong, is
Sure.
that we're expecting certain people to be intrigued by the complexity, and that the complexity itself will draw out the right individuals, and those right individuals will be the foundation of the project. At least it's
That's
how it
pretty on the
seems.
mark.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I totally agree. We don't need a lot of people, but maybe having a couple of the right people. And so one of the things we could probably do in advance is to think very carefully about, who is the right kind of person for this. And what kind of, I guess within the art space, are there any artists that we feel like this kind of calls out to already? Um, just something to think about. But yeah, I love this conversation around ABF, and just actually even hearing you two kind of go back and forth a little bit, talking about your different insights on the project. And I see it on your face every time we speak, Dave, where you're like, "What the hell is ABF becoming?"
Yeah. No, that to me just sounds like a good project too.
yeah, but I mean,
This is
I
the hill I'm
think
gonna die on. Like,
it's not like a scary problem. There's a big audience of engineers, to be frank, right? Like the whole Tesla scene, I think, is heavy with engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So they're out there. I think it's just a matter of like capturing their attention and just like really hooking them. To me, it's like because I'm not involved in the engineering side, I'm thinking through the aesthetics, the styling stuff is interesting to me, at least like presentation wise, right? So yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll see what happens.
it's like,
How did
yeah,
yeah?
it's like as a project, it's like the idea. If you were to like take away all the execution requirements, it's like I like to think it's a really crypto native idea. Like you only crypto would demand that we're gonna take the most useless piece of crap of a programming language and manifest utility in it. Like and then we're gonna make it literally have a price tag by tokenizing it into an NFT. So people not just can see a useless language be useful, but have a price tag to attribute to this language. And it's just like, this is the kind of shit that I feel like people outside of crypto is like, this is why I hate you kids. Like, this
No
is why I hate
doubt.
you guys, right?
No doubt.
Like, and I find that energy just so right. about the project. Like
Yeah.
like it just it hits the right nerves, and it just now we're just like the devil's in the
This is
details
like
now, right? So
it's
it's
also like
like
your love letter to like your right that you've been looking at.
yeah. I mean, I
mean,
personally have always loved
the
like
eight opcodes thing
computational
is
theory.
this is the opcode set. This is as small as it gets, right? Eight. That's like a useful like you actually do shit with it.
Yeah, I'm forgetting some of my college
For my
courses on
yeah
programming languages, but this is at a feasible level for a language, I think, as good as it gets.
yeah. I mean the worst shit
Because it's practically
for me.
a Turing machine.
Yeah, I mean this brainfuck's harder than LC3 assembly, which is already shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but like it's like it's so hard. It becomes so simple because you're like, well, there's only 8 opcodes. Like
So
if you
to
think about it,
bullshit. Yeah.
you right. If you like the magic of it becomes is like, okay, my next character. If I were to guess, it's literally a 13% chance I guessed it right. Right? Like it's like this weird. It becomes so simple. Like it becomes a little bit like, well, my only things I have to control. Because if you think about it, as a modern programming engineer, right? If you build a front end app, you got to think about memory management, threads, garbage collection, state flow, UI, and how does that translate? If you're a front end dev, you got to understand how the DOM works, and how does your code translate into an HTML page with JavaScript interactivity, with all this crap. It's like we have to kind of be conscious of that as a modern like engineer. But like I present to you a case where you literally have 8 opcodes, a tape where you can fill it with data, and then you can print it out. And it's like, cut all the bull crap. Here you go, right? And I don't know. I just feel like people would appreciate like that breath of fresh air, because I don't think anybody will go out of their own way to in such a clinical environment. If you have free time, you probably won't do it right on your own. Like I think most people, engineers or people who enjoy coding, will say, "I'm going to spend a weekend writing brainfuck for fun." Right? Like that's just not something I think a lot of people would enduringly enjoy. But I feel like giving them a goal now is
like the fact that initial version will be in test actually helps things a lot because there's just no friction to deployment.
Yeah. It's like I feel like that's what it was a big thing in the beginning. It was like, wait, we really need people just to be enjoying this without the money part, without money being at play, where they can. Because I feel like the very beginning, a lot of us are gonna write some really long brainfuck code because we haven't figured out how to be efficient with 8 opcodes, right? But eventually, we'll get better, right? So we need to kind of give them in a very safe sandbox, right? And I'm seriously considering it where I feel like we could have a mainnet version and even an L2 version of the ABF protocol. That's kind of going to be up to the community. I don't have enough strong of an opinion about it, but I feel like we still need a really strong sandbox where people can just freely play with the system without feeling like, well, if I deploy this on main, that's going to cost me $500 to sustain the gas, right? And I think maybe like an L2 can make some of the more Tezos effects or the 8-veto effect, because that's also on Tezos, that kind of free willy-nilly energy be more vibrant, where they're like, well, I deployed this for $1, right? Like if it does well, because I'm not doing this for money, right? But like if you create something like, oh shit, this is good, like this is quality, and I want to make money from it, then go to mainnet, right, where the capital actually exists. And I feel like having a gradient where your place with your creative endeavors has a home makes sense. And I think a test net where no money really is on the line is good to start with. And then we need to have like the headlining environment, which is the environment where like you can see a brainfuck NFT sell for 10 ETH plus, right? Because that's going to get you, on Defiant News. That's going to get you on Bankless Podcast, like right, like that's the kind of shit that like puts you on the normie map to a degree, right? Where capital directly ascribes itself to brain fucked. Right? And then I feel like having a middle ground where there's like a environment that's much more like there is money. You can use money to signal the value of your NFT, but like it's much more keen towards let's just build for fun and see if it does well, make a few bucks, right? Like it. But then if it does really well, then maybe I build a subsequent version on mainnet that capitalizes on the signaling I received on an L2. I don't know. Like that's my theory. That's why I'm kind of like on the fence. I'm still on the fence about it because I don't think I don't think any projects does a L2 variant of their main chain version. But then I don't know. Like we see some of that behavior with like ABFs, not ABF, art blocks with their factory system, factory curated and whatever. But I don't know. That's my theory crafting right now.
On that note, would it even matter which layer 2 you choose? Or do you have an idea?
I don't know. I guess.
I mean, what the biggest
Polygon.
Polygon,
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess where the market is, but like a part of me feels rebellious enough to say optimism, but
maybe we wait
that
for
would
them
be
to
cool.
give us a
and we'll see.
I mean, I would say like optimism's NFT world is less capital intensive right now, and it's like legitimately it feels like the Wild West when it comes to it's just like people creating things that they vibe with. It doesn't feel like it's like Polygon right now, where Polygon gives me this energy where there's like a lot of fucking money being pushed around into young studios that I don't think has fully proven their capabilities to produce. Where Optimism has this like virgin energy, like it's just like I look at the project there, it's like yeah, and that's why I kind of like it. But then like to that degree, is like we're paving a market. We're not going into a market. We're literally manifesting an optimism market then because it doesn't exist.
Could be.
Yeah, which like you know, like my pirating nature feels like that's a fun challenge to take on. Like I don't kind of shy away from that. Like but like I don't even think OpenSea's on Optimism. I'm half certain about that because I don't even think there's enough NFTs that Optimism is within the eyes of.
It uses need for gas.
Dude, I love that. It's just OE.
So much better, they have a cooler logo.
But yeah, like
checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own misgivings with how Optimism came to be, but like, I don't know. It's like these L2s. It's so hard to be opinionated about where do you issue on them. Like, it's like they're just all still inferior to mainnet when it comes to capital draw. Like that just is the case. Like, and they're all competing on the parity of like we're more gas efficient. But we don't have enough capital to sustain these kind of markets that you may be interested in. And yeah, so like I mean, like the DeFi on Polygon feels like honestly is just like the Wild West. Like either you're like a odd replication or you're a compound replication, or like maybe Uniswap got replicated onto there. But then other than that, it's just like crazy yield products, at least in the bull market. But no, I don't know about now. I mean, I don't trade on L2s to be honest. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like that's why I feel like it's up to the community. It's like I honestly just don't have an intuition about L2 choice and L2 decision making as a studio. It's like if we're gonna issue on there, like the advantage is gas fees. And at that point, then like, what do we care between each L2? Like, which one do we go to? Right? Like, should we go to one where there's a market already established, or should we take the risk of going to one where we have to pay the market out? Yeah, and you know, as a studio, we still need to have capital inflows, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's like. I feel like we constantly come back to this L2, and every time we do come to L2 conversations, it just becomes like, we will see. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
like it's like a yeah, like like at this point, like Solana is just broken 24/7.
Mhm. Mhm. It's always off.
And then
Yeah.
yeah, so and also like just Solana's NFT community there, with a few exceptions that I'm aware of, it just feels it feels like it honestly just doesn't give me it gives me BSC vibes.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and yeah, yeah, it gives me BSC vibes, and I mean like to this point, like I feel like like mainnet like NFTs, it's like because they have so much value, we're actually finally seeing like a lot of that financialization markets like layers built on top of these NFTs. Like we're seeing like loaning markets actually start to be built around these NFTs, which creates a lot of power to these NFTs, right? Being able to take out a loan and not have to sell it and incur capital gains, right? Like it. So yeah, and I feel like going to an L2 and enhancing interactivity at the cost of capital.
It's gonna be different target market too, right? So
It's
I
it's
think
just like it's a different market, and to a degree, I keep on coming back
Mhm.
to it. This is something we talked about last time. It's just like we haven't figured out how to make a good interactive NFT. I just don't feel like as a market we figured it out yet. Like it, well, I guess there's the Axes world that kind of maybe did it, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anything really about them beyond they have like 50 billion tokens called Potion or something that they interact with on a daily. Um, but
Are you guys aware of what's happening on Kusama with their Canaria birds?
Kusama, I don't even
Yeah,
know that's
I
basically
heard about this.
Remark, RMRK has built a protocol. They're calling it NFT 2.0. Funny enough, we talked about NFT 2.0 last week, so I kind of got a kick out of it. But this standard allows them to basically use NFTs akin to Lego blocks, where you can add other blocks essentially onto the original Lego block, the original NFT, and continue to add different iterations or change that NFT by changing the components of it. Um,
so it's
is
like a
really
Is
interesting.
it
upgradable
contract?
NFT contract.
It's a kind of like an upgradable. The interesting thing is about it. For me, for example, if I wanted to equip an item to my original, let's say I have a Canaria bird and I have like a sword, and I want to attach a sword to that Canaria bird, I actually have to equip it to the original NFT contract. I'm not exactly sure how that works on a technical level, but it is interesting to see that there are different
So I want so with this like equipment metaphor, I've thought about this for a very long time since the beginning of NFTs. Was what would you want it in the NFT level that it has a quality of equipment? Like it feels like for one, it fucks with the secondary market. It's like I feel like you need to be able to assess NFTs with what they're currently equipped, and that what they're currently equipped can be changed. I feel like you're just giving
yes.
OpenSea like the worst problem in the world to ever deal with because right like they like wait what if they sandwich you right like say like I equipped the diamond sword and I sell it for 30 ETH and he's like oh I'm gonna buy a diamond sword and an NFT together as a bundle right like it if
Right.
that's the case then they could what if they can unequip it right before right then in that case you need to perform an on-chain kind of sealing when you do equipments right but then if you on-chain seal it it feels like the equipment qualities feels like a little less
I mean,
meaningful because then it's really just time locking an attribute in.
I mean, you can think about why
Um,
they made this. Did they make it specifically for like? I mean, are they trying to have the gaming use case? Is that really what it
Yeah,
is?
this definitely has a gaming use case. They're actually working on a metaverse called Skybreach. The land sale for it just closed today, actually, and so they're building more of a gamified interactive NFT experience. With respect to selling it, from my own experience, I believe that in order to sell your NFT, you basically have to list it for sale, and it's listed in its current form. And so, yeah, you might actually get a deal and you might be able to arbitrage the market. Like you could go look in the marketplace and see which items are attached to that Canaria bird. and maybe it's listed for 30 KSM, and you go total up the value of those items and you find out that it's actually a 42 KSM Canaria bird, you can arbitrage. I find though the mechanics are kind of interesting here, because I almost feel like it's the opposite effect, where people are like, wow, my bird has more items on it, and these items also have rarity traits, which increases the value of my bird far more than the average canary bird. So you'll usually find that the listing median sale price could be like, I don't know, 20 KSM, for example, but the average bird listed with certain significant items would be significantly higher, right? But yeah, the mechanic of how it works seems to be very much built around gaming, and I imagine almost like the principle, because they started out with an individual avatar. I kind of think about it like a house. Like, it'd be really neat if they started with like a house and you were adding like different windows, and maybe you change the front door, you add the paint color to the house, you change how it looks, you add some decorations to the yard or whatever it is, right? But I kind of imagine this principle scaling into something like that. It's more of a metaverse application.
I mean, it is
Like,
it's a metaverse idea.
I mean,
This
and yeah, I mean, to this degree, it's not an NFT that we would ascribe in current modernity, right? Like, it's just a different genre. Like, you can't make the same capital assumptions around it. You can't make the same supply assumptions. It has a different kind of control incentive, right? Like, I wouldn't buy personally let's just say one of these houses are really, really well made and took off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't buy it for, like, if it sells for 100 ETH, I wouldn't buy it for 100 ETH. Like, it, for one, is I fear a upgradable contract. Like, what does that mean? What if in the future they figure out a way it's been maliciously used, or two, it's the value is still largely going to be incumbent upon a studio that has their own interests of financial reasons. And I feel like at least modern PFPs with most designs, not all the contract designs, it's like the fact that they're static does make it more investable, right? Like, buying a punk, I was like, I know this punk, unless I do something absolutely dipshit dumb and burn it accidentally, that thing is going to be a punk. Like, it won't change. So it's like, I know that cuts a variable away from my appraisal, right? I just have to know what the market thinks of this. I don't have to think of another singular party. And I feel like these metaversal NFTs, they just require a different form of calculus. Not to say it's a bad form and something that I don't appreciate, but like, it's just, it demands a different form of thinking. And to be fair, and I'm going to be very honest, is my 2 cent reaction to it compared to also like how, like, I guess like Steam markets may have existed. I don't know if we can sustain a sophisticated enough population that wants to participate with this amount of atomic layers of like combining and disintegrating parts and putting things together to qualifiably make something of value. I feel like, like, people at the end of the day, the emergent behavior is probably going to be like, I'm going to sell this really, really rare door frame independently at spot market, or versus putting it together in a house. And to a degree, if you would argue, like, where could we see this kind of behavior of values? Like, probably we'll see it in the, like, like crypto voxels context, where like, which to a degree I think is an oversimplification, right? Like, you can think about, you buy a blank piece of land in crypto voxels, that should be cheaper than buying a piece of land where somebody built something in it, right? Like, already pre-built, right? So I guess there should be a price, but in that case, the things that you build on that plot of land are not NFTs. They're not scarce, right? So if there's an arbitrage market where you buy land, you literally just take it apart into its constituent atomic parts, just sell the parts and sell the land all independently. Like, man, it takes a degree of sophistication that, like, I feel like we're all collectively way too dumb for it. But
yeah,
I'm all for it, to be honest. I feel like that could be fun. It could be exciting to see a very vibrant community of builders and like deconstructors who deconstruct to arbitrage the spot market for the constituent parts. But what if maybe
we're assuming a market,
but then, like,
this
right. And but like, what it would be crazy? What if the metaverse like has an attribute where like if you were to break it down after its use, it loses its quality. Like it becomes like used as a good attribute, so it's like less valid if it's not a virgin
Actually,
block, and then if it's consumed, and maybe there's certain blocks like a brass piece that builds up patina, so it actually needs to be used to create more value. So right, like you could really freaking play around with these metaversal
you're
qualities
actually
that
so on
mimic
point
real
here.
life, right? Like it.
Hmm. This is something they're doing too. Like they actually have land rarities, and each land rarity has a different decay period. And so, say you have an epic rarity, well, that might decay over 360 days. So you actually have an incentive to continuously maintain that plot. Or, for example, there's a tax on certain plots depending on where you're located, and so you'd want to ensure that you're obviously producing more than you're being taxed. And so there's this like idea to create um, a valuable piece of metaverse property, I guess, in a gamified way, which is really interesting. So it's actually really cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so this is one of the things where I've always had a problem with these metaverse centralized team kind of things. It's like I feel like the best metaversal worlds are ones that like mostly it's the community that manifests its best parts, with predicated upon the qualities of a stubbed out tool that the core team offered. And I
Hmm.
think of that like with like Minecraft, to a degree. You
Lord.
can say Roblox, but even though they have some pretty shady corporate pricing mechanics to scam kids, um, to a degree, you can say that about a lot of like the old world games, like Second Life, to a degree, like the ability to create little mini things, clothing, or whatever. Uh, um, and I just feel like yeah, like to a degree, you can even argue like what like Stardew Valley, right? Like these kind of titles where I think its power really just came from sheer community force, right? Where the studio gave you tools and that's it. And to me, that's what draws me to NFTs is like
Hmm.
they're really literally all tools. They're all atomically tools. Um, but as that's where I have my own misgivings with
Yeah.
upgradable NFTs. Is it? I'd rather them be stable Lego blocks that I can Lego in my creative ways than
Yeah.
an NFT that changes. Like that makes it for me not fun. I don't
Hmm.
know. Like
Hmm.
as a creator, not as a sheer consumer, as a creator.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
gotta.
personally really want to do like Metaverse Land where like you take on-chain quilts and use that to texture the world. And then
Hmm.
there's another project that's like on-chain map, like flags, and then the
Hmm.
flags will be the country of it. And then you use Gratis to become like the characters on your little civilization, and
Cool.
then
Hmm.
it's like a voxelized world or whatever, right? But like that to me is like that's the metaverse to me. That's fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
where like it's like a componentization of these open things where
It
you
feels
under
like a
where as a
world.
creator you understand the guarantees. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like each
Um.
isolated thing. Like I gotta go soon actually, but um I mean I could say my 2 cents on metaverse, which I'm the most
Go ahead. Go ahead.
pessimistic. Yeah, most
Please do.
pessimistic of
Yeah.
everyone. I really don't fuck land art stuff that's spun up by each project because on-chain land for what, right? It's like I don't know. It's Warcraft has had the in-game marketplace for a long time, right? So like, it's not a new
Hmm.
concept of like doing stuff like this. In fact, it's kind of strange why we haven't seen a craft where they just basically trade the same way, right? But with crypto, I mean, Axe is doing that, but yeah, I think like the quality of metaverse things right now are like very low. There's lacking imagination. There's too much emphasis on the trading component, the marketplace component of
And
things.
you know what?
Yeah,
Hmm.
It feels detached from humanity. All these
you're right.
metaverse projects, and that
Hmm.
really
Yeah,
unnerves me.
yeah,
Like, it's, like let's just say, like you can look at the tribe of like the Mark Zuckerberg style things. I look at it as like this is a fucking dystopic sci-fi movie
yeah,
you are trying to pitch to me, and I don't like that.
yeah.
Like it,
like
Um,
other ideas you can do. Like there's what was is it Gather Town? Oh, Gather Town. I think that's what it was. Like yeah, so Gather Town is like these kids basically made like a Pokemon like interface for like doing meetups and like classroom chats and shit like that. But really, what they built is a very good expandable world for stitching together different maps and interacting with each other as players, and then modularizing different like components of the game. They basically Pokemon, but like scale. And so, I mean that you could do like why aren't we seeing like a Ready Player for like crypto stuff? Where I mean these are all just dApps, right?
Right.
If you have a Pokemon style dApp, you could plug into Uniswap and you could build like it for AMMs and different shit, right? Like you could do it if you wanted to. And that would be a true metaverse to me. Is when you're actually interfacing with other stuff. You're not trying to build out some on-chain land, economy bullshit like Animal. Was it Animal Party or Animal Crossing? Yeah, like everyone's trying to make their own Animal Crossing kind of.
It feels like that.
So yeah,
Yeah, and it does feel detached from reality. Like when I consider the metaverse, I think about all these different components that we already use, like FaceTime, Messenger, Instagram, search on browsers, and whatever, and kind of bringing all of those useful components into a well, maybe not centralized, into a single location where we can utilize all those tools in a way that is fun and more useful. But whenever we detach the metaverse from reality, it's almost like we're detaching the real world use case, right? And it's like if we start bringing the tools we already use every day into the mind share of what we consider the metaverse to be, we could already think that like, okay, well, metaverse 1.0 is already built. It's just kind of like fragmented and all over the place.
exactly.
And we can bring it together and start building on top of that to have the metaverses that we dream of. Um, it's going to be really interesting to see what that becomes.
Yeah. So Gathertown team, if you're listening to this, you should just switch to crypto. Fucking around.
I mean, like to a
Shout out
degree, I
Gathertown.
thought about it. It's just like with these
But I
like
gotta actually hop
standing.
off, so I'll
All
let
right,
you
you're
guys
gonna bounce.
keep going.
I'll
Yeah.
hold the fort with it.
Yeah. See, let me know if there's issues, but all
All
right.
right.
See you guys.
Awesome.
But yeah, like I feel like with some of these metaverse projects, like I wonder like how much of it was luck for like Animal Crossing or for World of Warcraft. Like how much are we trying to like pattern match their success stories into a strategy of attack? And then with that implication, we're using that as like a survivor bias to say, um, hey, can I raise $100 million capital to um, to do XYZ because there's a success story and I'm gonna try to replicate it with all these flashy things were like keywords as well, right? Like
Right.
And I just feel like like cult communities around projects don't feel like one of those things where you should be manufacturing it. Like it, even movies, just all forms of entertainment. I feel like it's a lot more organic. Um, I don't know. I feel like I mean, as a studio, we've always had quite a much more of a bearish sentiment towards metaversal projects. Not in the sense that we don't see it happening. It's just I don't think that the current model of thinking will get us maybe in that direction. Because I feel like the current model of thinking is literally just like spinning the roulette wheel until hopefully one of these project teams take off, and then we're like, oh, that's a successful story. But like, really, I don't think so. Like, I feel like to a degree, you can even argue that with the game markets, right? Like, I don't think game like as much as you design a good game, it's like half of it is just like you release it, and you're like, oh, there's a community, or it's like, oh shit, like, well, this game kind of flopped, like it doesn't work out, right? And I'm also kind of really drawn upon the experiences of my younger brother, who he just recently graduated from high school. He's an indie game dev. He makes Unity games on his side for fun.
Okay. Nice.
And he's that means he has a program, but he also does art. He does everything. He does the whole show. He makes music as well, right? Like
Wow.
He's a one man
Yeah.
show. Like I
Impressive.
think I'm pretty capable, but like I look at his capabilities, and you're the better brother between us two. But he creates these projects, like these games that are, frankly speaking, they're not like really games, they're more so like storytelling. But to see the kind of community that he's able to manifest on Discord and even on Steam with the reviews, like he got the community to help him translate his game into so many languages, right? And I just see this kind of behavior, and the game is free. Like he's not making a penny from it, which
Wow. Yeah.
kudos to him for spending so much time and building something just for people to enjoy. But it just feels so palpable. Like this, for one, you just don't need a lot of people. But two is like as artists creating art, like do we should we demand our art to be seen by a million people? Like it feels like if we do start demanding that, then you're not really creating art, you're creating popular culture, right? Like it's
Right. Right.
um so like to that point, like I just feel like I feel so inspired by my younger brother's work to a degree sometimes where it's just like this thing probably really impacted a lot of people's lives and also his life. And I feel that to that point, like we uh I take it as a breath of fresh air. It's like when we demand ourselves, and I feel like a lot of these metaversal teams also demand so much of themselves. Like we gotta be the World of Warcraft of the future or whatever, right? I don't know. It's like it comes back down to just like the artistry of it all. So um,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like people don't even know what to compare it to. Like they don't know how to conceptualize it, right? So they look at a success story like you're saying, like Animal Crossing, where they had a burgeoning Discord community and like a growing online community on a totally different platform. And then we have like World of Warcraft and we have all of these other different platforms. Um, so we're trying to compare what exists to what is going to exist in a matter of time. And I agree with you in that we're probably not heading in the right direction, but it would be awesome if we were even just heading in the direction that is at least 10% right. And then we just
yeah,
figure out how
yeah,
to be less wrong over the next decade, right?
yeah. I mean, I feel like it's something that some people would think that I'm like a very like against this kind of thing, but more like I'm like we should just do it with the right amount of objective optimism. Like like
Mm-hmm.
it um and it's always been something I had a misgiving with crypto is it really capitalizes on humans' emotions and the manipulation of emotions to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
is to say that like welcome to like financialization of things, right? Like that I wouldn't say that's a culprit of crypto. It's just crypto was an enabler
Yeah,
of it because
I
of its
agree.
technological foundations, right? But like it just like takes this FOMO and just kind of sets aside like, okay, well, it these projects, it's like it's going to take quite a bit of freaking luck, and then the wits of the creator, the core team to challenge themselves in strategy that they probably will never be challenged in ever in their life before like that, right? So yeah, like
Yeah,
it feels
yeah.
like if I were to invest, I would just shotgun into projects. I don't think I would support one singular core team. Um, in part, I feel like also I just don't understand it. I feel like I just don't understand the freaking market. That's why I say that. Like I don't say
Mm-hmm.
that about PFPs. Like PFPs, I'm very particular about
Right.
which ones I participate in the markets for. And generative art, I'm a little bit mixed about with its market performance. Some of the lower good art I like to enjoy as good art, but yeah, its relationship towards um, the the community and also to its artists feels a little bit more less vibrant, even
Mm-hmm.
compared to a
Mm-hmm.
PFP project, where it feels like once an art is performed and created, the artist kind of just goes away, like after a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of time, and that's not something that I feel like helps the community grow together. Where at least the good PFPs, they have a sense of their own responsibility to maybe be there, and not rug, right?
Hmm.
But and I think that calls upon to why we as a studio demanded ourselves what we do today, right? Which is I don't think any of our projects are ever quote unquote finished, right? Like it doesn't matter of like where does our mind take us, right? Like we are a generative artist creator, right? But I feel like Hash is still a breathing project, right? London is a breathing
Right.
project.
Right.
AVF is a project that we can't even shut it down if we freaking wanted to. And Reaper so is the case, and Publico really is just an extension of the studio, right? Like it's just a way of us performing art in a crypto Web3 way, right? So I feel like we do have our own opinions about generative, like about the fine art world, where we're trying to make a a world where roadmaps that don't exist, art is created usually by singular or very small partied people,
Hmm.
and there's not an expectation of responsibility to help nurture that project and hopefully present a organization that can hopefully provide an answer, not an answer, but a improvement upon that status quo. Because it feels like I admit it, like it feels like generative art to me is just like you buy it, you hope that the artist gives you a physical print of it, and then you hope the secondary does well. And that's obviously me being very reductionist here because I do own quite a few other generative art. But
Yeah.
like that feels like it's it. And I'm gonna say like PFPs are not that much better. Like PFPs, it's like the same play, but like at least there's always like a us versus them kind of a play
Right.
with PFPs. But two is also you got fucking free money with their airdrops. So that's always a great incentive. um, and there's
I'd
court
love
there.
to.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm done with my thought here.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on what your thoughts are on, say, like a VFriends type collection, which is very much like its own market, its own community, and it's a flourishing community
Yeah.
that's seemingly doing very well. But you'll probably notice this as well in the very early days. Like when I say early days, I'm talking like 2020. Gary Vee was not accepted by the crypto community
Yeah.
in the slightest, right? There was a
Yeah.
lot of distaste towards Gary. I feel like slowly he's winning over the respect and the mind share of a lot of the crypto community.
Yeah.
But still, you have these people creating a niche for him, almost in particular, calling it what is it, influencer NFTs, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so
Um,
I have my own opinions on this, but I'd love to hear yours.
I mean, I do have a little color on the story. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm not gonna name who he is specifically. But I'll just let him if he wants to tell the world that what he does. It's nothing erroneous. It's just me
Yeah.
valuing his privacy.
Yep.
But I have a college friend who dropped out of college to work for Gary Vee way back in 2018, 2019.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he was working on their NFT strategy way back when. This was like the dark ages of NFTs. So he was there kind of just as a hired. So it's all right. You figure out tokens for Gary Vee as a strategy. Like build up his thinking, his education. He worked fairly closely with him for a duration of time before I think he went back to college to finish out his degree, and then he's doing a lot of quick, cool stuff right now. But now he's a little bit removed from the markets. But yeah, I mean, like I largely felt I had just through his experience as a peer, I knew that Gary Vee has been playing a long game
Yeah.
in this market. He's been aware of it. He's been learning about it, doing things. Now, I don't personally have any degree of like cult of personality respect towards Gary Vee. I think he's a hard worker. He does what he does. He found a business model that works, and I respect that, but I don't really
Mhm.
step beyond from that. Um, but I mean, I look at the VFriends things and the kind of soft utility implied, and I kind of really feel like I can see the inspiration of it because I kind of know where this energy came from.
Mhm.
But two is I find it to be very respectable. This kind of energy, this organic group. It's like an organic group think, organic community building, where like they were able to manifest around this personality that they all respect or worship. I don't know. And they have expressive soft utility, and there's a way to show it within the army that has a business model that is slightly different from a PFP, and then so it's like power to him, like power to that community, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
the fact that the whole collective crypto tried to shame you out of existence tells me that like this kind of organic business model kind of shows how short-sighted crypto is sometimes. Like it tells me that like we have such a strong opinion about some things. It's just like we're not permissive of other ways to grow something. Um, well, such is the case of our tribalism in our markets.
Right.
um, um, but yeah, I mean, I don't quite know a lot about what they did during the build-up. I kind of loosely followed them, but like
Mhm.
I, I don't really have much bad things to say or even strictly positive things to say beyond just like that's a fascinating data point, and
Yeah.
I think as a creator, we should value learning from it over shaming it for whatever reason you have a reason to shame it for it, right? Like um,
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
Right. It's kind of funny because like crypto is the result of a lot of hardworking people, but then there's also this this environment that exists within crypto where people kind of like hate the quote unquote grind set or like the hustler mentality, right? And
Yeah,
so you can kind of see how Gary Vee gets it, you
yeah,
know, which is kind of funny to me because the real people who are really building things in crypto are working very, very hard to do so, and they're just not talking about it.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think there's anything that more like I'm gonna be honest is like I feel like the day I'm just gonna call it quits with crypto is gonna be the day where I feel like as a creator what we do is just not valued anymore. Like it,
Mm,
we're so dehumanized out of the equation, and I feel like there's going to be such a black swan event or duration events where I'm just like, you know, it's just not worth putting so much on the line when it comes to mental, but also your state of being and what you exert creatively. Because like
hmm.
you know, like we are always one random thing away from accidentally or purposely rug pulling people. we're,
That's
we're,
true.
we're all
Hmm.
we're always in that position um as creator and to be honest as hard as we can do to not accidentally rug pull people, you know, also the rug pull definition is so malleable today.
Yeah.
um it for one it people take one event and then label a person as infinitely bad or infinitely good.
Hmm.
um and when I look at the span of creators that I personally know, and also the creators from ranging to really high quality PFPs to things that have definitely faced certain controversy, it's like, yeah, like it's like we're all still imperfect dudes, right? Like it's dudes and
Right.
dudettes, right? Like it, and I look at creators in the movie field, it's like they've all had their share of controversy, right?
Indeed.
And they've done it for spans of decades, and they're still creating some damn good pieces, right? Like Kafka,
Hmm.
Tom Cruise, right? Like I think cinema would genuinely not be the same if there's not a guy that can greenlight his own movies and stunts and
Hmm.
perform it himself and demand the quality of production that he wants. Not to say quality isn't good, but whatever his attribute, like Top Gun,
Yeah.
right? Like how
Yeah.
he
Top
like,
Gun's
no, we're
great.
gonna have to
Yeah.
put it on a freaking F-18, right? Like they're him and maybe
Yeah.
Nolan and maybe Dennis Villeneuve that like kind of does this like with his Dune movie. that really has such a strong demand of artistry. And I wouldn't say any of these
Right.
people are particularly perfect with their act of creation. Um, but I feel like, having a culture that celebrates that these people dared to create, right? Like, even though that, I mean, yes, they make a lot of money, right? Like, as creators, if we create well, we should be economically rewarded for our exertion, right? Like it,
Right.
um, but
Naturally.
like in crypto, it's like, which not to default, honestly, I can see totally why it happens. It's just like there's such a strong if I want something to fail, it better freaking fail kind of mentality. Um,
Hmm.
so you'll pick out any detail to make it fail, right? And I look at some of these creators, it's like they certainly have been shamed upon, and I'm like, if I was in their shoes, and I'm gonna guess what really happened behind the scenes. Now, I don't say this as if I'm excusing all the really nefarious creators. I'm not.
Right.
But for some of them, it's just like, honestly, probably what happened was they were on a group meet. They're like, well, we have a billion other tasks, and this one was literally, so it's like, okay, we'll just do this with like 2 seconds of thought, and this 2 second thought accidentally became a rug pull, right?
Yeah.
Like it happens, and we've accidentally rug pulled people with London, right? Like I left a bug that I
Yes.
didn't know for 3 days, right? Like it, so um,
Do you think changing
yeah.
subject or not changing, but I guess on subject of what you're talking about rug pulls actually, do you think Sartoshi was a rug pull? This happened yesterday. Do you hear about this?
Oh my god, this project. I've loosely followed it. I genuinely don't know enough to even have an opinion here.
Yeah, well, with
So what
MFers.
exactly happened?
I couldn't tell you what exactly happened, but all I know is that Sartoshi left the space, closed down his Twitter account, wasn't a founder, from what I can tell, wasn't necessarily a founder of MFers, just a prominent MFer. What he did is he seemingly left his address and the seed and then took a 25% royalty or something along that line. And a lot of people are saying it was a soft rug and different things like that, right? Any amount of money taken out, I guess the big concern is actually within the royalty, the 25% royalty. So people are saying because he put the royalty in place, it's a rug. Be curious to get your insights on that once you have a more complete
I'm like
picture of what
skimming
happened.
this article.
Yeah.
Oh
There's a
yeah,
lot
I
of
had a
people
brief
pissed off.
conversation with my dad about this NFT. He was like telling me he's like this weird NFT that looks like stick figures. I'm like, is that like and for like this project? I'm
Yeah.
like, Dad, I don't know why that you know about this, but like, I don't know what you're following on Twitter.
It's funny.
So he just like exited the market.
Yeah, he just exited. He was very prominent on Twitter, right? And
Yeah, I've seen his profile. Like,
yeah, the orange Sartoshi image. He I guess he closed his account down, and that was the real I don't know, the real instigator of the whole conversation, I guess.
yeah, I don't know. It just gets so dangerous. With having a matter of opinion. Like for one, it's like I'm not a fan of anonymous identities. Um, and this is an opinion for me that has changed a lot, month by month, year by year. Like I remember reading, I forgot which yellow white paper. I want to say it's one of the original DAO projects, Aragon maybe. But it was like, yeah, like if we can strip identity from our biological self, it makes violence a lot harder to implicate when um, you can't look at a wealthy identity and say like there's a person, I just have to point a gun at that person and perform an act of violation, right? And or two is like, I really do buy into the DeFi thesis that Zurex is really strong about, which is making a financial system that could not care about who you actually are biologically, um, and just cares about you coming up to the market with the right assets and the predicated credit that it's implied to give. Like I really do buy into the whole geographic lottery problem where if you were born as an American citizen, as a Canadian citizen, as a citizen of the EU, you certainly just have a lot more opportunity to financial access to enable the opportunities you want to enable in your life compared to somebody who's born in a country in Africa or even a politically uh, closed off country like China. Um,
Right.
like I strongly believe that this is our opportunity to be equal, but to be equal, you do demand that identity has to be homogenized to a degree where you couldn't care. And I think homogenization just will create and breed a place of anonymous identities where a person can have multiple identities. And I just find the bad actions related to this so horrendous. When it happens, when people can rage quit identities like this.
Yeah, I agree with
Not a
that.
fan of it. Like it just giving people that rage quit, I think brings a lot of the worst out of people as an incentive behavior. And I think crypto is not about people being good. I don't think that's what blockchains are about. Blockchain is about making good and bad actors act in a way that creates a net positive. Right. It's an incentive mechanic design. It's like it's like I don't care how greedy you are, but you're going to work in a way that like hopefully secures the blockchain. Right. Like it has incentive mechanical design. And that's something that like I have my misgivings with Luna and these kind of like stable coins, senior like these kind of like stable coin projects because they're mechanically not designed to make bad people work for your benefit. And I think anonymous identity is like incentive design in crypto where so much money is being played around. It's a little hard, but I can also get why people want to be anonymous. So it's a very mixed feeling, and I say this because I don't really know much about. I don't own an NFT of this collection, and yeah, I'm certainly sure that probably something really bad happened in real life that made him yeet this golden throne that he's probably sitting on.
Right.
So
It's a good
yeah, I mean,
perspective. Yeah.
I really do hope that I really do hope more of that YouTube kind of OG energy comes where creators get to create and we get to be valued as creators and allowed to make mistakes, but also allowed to be human. And I feel like to do that, we have to meet each other halfway. And I think a way to meet halfway is to dox ourselves as a creator. And then the other half is for an understanding audience to want to receive the very human creation process that you're trying to publicly assert. And yeah, I mean, I don't think YouTube really strongly has that kind of like anonymous culture, especially the original YouTube, right? Like everybody is just like, I'm a personality, right? With YouTube, right? So like, I mean, certainly there's now, I think, a lot of creatives that don't show their face, and I totally respect that. But to start a creative market where anonymous is like the de facto standard,
it's a little odd. Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder how many of these people, just drawing from my own situation a little bit, being anonymous right now and planning to not be anonymous in the future. I wonder how many people are kind of just in like a transition state where maybe they're in a particular industry or working with, people in particular that they don't want to allude to this identity that they have or whatever. Like, I wonder how many
I feel like that's a big case.
Yeah.
I genuinely think it's a very big case because I feel like also knowing your own story to a degree, but I feel like a lot of folks. I mean, to a degree, this is kind of what we do with games. Like when I go into a game, I have my own kind of like not a persona, but like profile picture, its own like I don't use Dave.
No, of course
strictly
not.
4506, right? I have a different tag, and I feel like going into NFTs kind of had that same ephemeral energy where you're like, especially if somebody's a newcomer, it's like don't know what I'm doing, but this is a new road I want to explore. And I want to explore in the safety of maybe not strictly my professional identity or my other career identity, right? And I value that, and I see that as really incredibly positive as a way to enter a place. And I say that to a degree to also say that like I myself didn't really have this problem. My
Mm-hmm.
only career identity is crypto. Like you know, this was my first job in
Right.
crypto. I never worked in other tech fields. I came out of college with a job in crypto. So for me, it was like, well, it wasn't a problem to um, manifest my identity as running a studio as myself, right? Because they're one of the same. I don't like people who know me in real life know I do crypto. Like they don't know what I do for a living, but like they
Mm-hmm.
know I play with the blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um so I guess I just have a very curious case where I don't think for me I felt the palpable energy that like I wanted to hide myself, but then like I know people who have created NFT projects that do kind of masquerade themselves a little bit with an identity.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, I mean, the range is massive, I think. But I feel like I will say that I feel like genuinely the original like NFT bunch wasn't many anonymous identities way back in the day. Um, Maybe I'm just like looking at this through a rose like colored glass. But like when Art Blocks just came through, like Art Blocks, I kind of knew he was kind of doxxed. Um, the guys who were making ETH emojis way back in the day was I knew them.
Yeah.
Um, I just felt like that there's a time where the community like Rizzle and all these folks that Token Smart who makes their uh, the whip their kind of weekly meetup. Crypto Voxel's founder is doxxed. Um, we kind of all know who the Crypto Kitties guys are just through the merits of the
Mm-hmm.
team.
Mm-hmm.
Dapper. Um, yeah, I guess it just. I mean, the original days, it just genuinely felt like I just knew people. Like I knew who they are. Like it. Um,
Now, did you like know them personally, or did you like meet them
not
in your
not
time at
not
Zero
many of them
X?
personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like I just knew who they are, like
Okay.
identity
Yeah.
wise, and I certainly have interacted with a few folks from Dapper. Um, and there's people I've looked up to that are from Dapper that I still chat, and I literally just reminded me I may have accidentally ghosted one of them. But
Okay.
um, yeah, like I really enjoyed chatting with those folks, and it's we're all so busy now. It's been a little hard to chat with those folks, but like
Mm-hmm.
you know like there's a lot of other XRX people right now that are doing NFT stuff as well as their full
Mm-hmm.
time kind of
Mm-hmm.
livelihood. Like there's Steve who's working on Party DAO or Party Bid, um, and recently I think they raised money, so that's really exciting. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like I do honestly. There's days where I do really miss the original, like the not the original, but like the quieter energy of the pre-bowl days, where it wasn't just loud people on NFT influencers manipulating things and moving from the next controversy to the next controversy. It was just
Right.
hardy people trying to get work done. um, but you can't stop growth. And we grew, and growth brings, tragedy, triumph. So,
Yeah.
what am I complaining about, right? Like it's just
Well, Dave, it's been a pretty great conversation. It's been about 90 minutes. I'm not sure if you want
Mhm.
to keep going or wrap it up. What are your thoughts?
um we can slowly start wrapping it up. If there's anything else that you want to chat about, we can maybe do one final thing or call it a day.
Yeah. I guess, talking about people who are doxed NFT figures, I'm wondering if there are any people out there that you're keeping your eyes on, and anybody out there who you feel like is really doing good work that you're being inspired by, or even Just somebody that you find interesting.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, is I don't follow a lot of influencers.
Mhm.
I'm not even on my own personal Twitter. I'm mostly either on the Proof of Beauty Twitter, and that gets the best and the worst of crypto Twitter. Um, I do have a quite a bit of respect to Steve K for his continued kind of work behind the scenes with so many random little projects that are so exciting in the NFT world. Um, and two is kind of is Rizzle from Tokensmart. I just feel like his vibe is just
Mhm.
so authentic. Like,
Yep.
and he's just one of the more OG guys. But I know that some of the original folks are so strongly opinionated about their own opinions that I feel like they're not permitting themselves to value other ideas. Um,
Mhm.
but I feel like I have a degree of respect towards. But like for me, as again, like I keep on bringing it back to this point, like the creators I respect, I look at they're not in this industry.
Mhm.
I look outwards for creation because I don't think I have found a creating model in this crypto world that strictly is something I want the studio to become. Um, I think the closest we ever have gotten is again kind of like the packs of the world, but like a studio like us who like doxes ourselves, who values the creation spirit, because I feel like
Mhm.
Pack plays into his mystery, right? Um, I think for us is the fact that we're doing a podcast in the first place, right? Like we value telling people about what we do and and our state of mind in hopes to motivate a generation of new creators.
Mhm.
And to that point, like I see this kind of as a spiritually a way for I genuinely believe like us doing podcasts and playing a strategy of speaking our mind. Um, hopefully, will play to how I was when I was a kid watching YouTube, in middle school, right? I mean, so inspired to the point where there was a point in my life where I really wanted to try to become a YouTuber. That very much so didn't happen.
Yeah.
But
I went
to
down
this
that road
day, I
too.
still, to this day, I feel so palpable this role model I have to the
Mhm.
creativity of the YouTube era, and I still very much so look up to that, and I hope that as we continue our podcasts and our active creation and our kind of our culture internally of being open minded about the challenges of running a studio like ours,
Mhm.
um, could hopefully spawn a generation of studios that you know aren't tech startups for one, um, and two are um, just about creating, just about having fun creating and learning as we go and building business models that make sense for the fund that we're participating in, right? And
Mhm.
um, not and there's and why I feel so stingent about not having a roadmap is just I don't want to promise. I don't. The studio is about creation, not about realizing visions. I think, and
Mhm.
I feel like there's certainly. I think before the studio, I felt very lost as a professional within even in crypto, and I feel like the continued people I meet and like yourself and others, it just feels like what Proof of Beauty has enabled is given us a place to share a very unique and palpable energy
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
would not have been easily shared, maybe in a different context environment, right? And I find that to be something like that really motivates me as a creation, as creating these new IPs and everything. It's just like we just bring the randomest thoughts. I feel like indirectly, I feel like I answer my own like ambitions. Is like if our projects don't make people create sentences that they never thought could be put together, then I think we're not exactly doing what I don't feel like we're
Mhm.
pushing the needle, right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
feel like all of our projects have done that in crypto. It's like, oh, I didn't think these are the sentences that could be spoken and be viable, right? We're gonna have a project that's gonna use a useless programming language to make it useful, right? Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That I have no clue how that's gonna work out, but I hope it does well. And then we're gonna have a Reaper project, and then we're gonna have the merge, and then we're gonna have maybe something else, right? Like it, yeah, and yeah. So sometimes it genuinely feels like we're like a singular ship trying to navigate the turbulent crypto waters. And then sometimes it does feel like
Yeah.
we have a lot of comrade at arms, but it's a fine balancing act. And so
I really like what you said about, maybe being that studio that could inspire a whole new generation of studios that aren't necessarily tech companies, more focused on the love of creation, the creative process itself. And that would be really beautiful. I feel like you would know the studio succeeded if you start seeing other studios being like, yeah, we were created because Proof of Beauty inspired us, right? Wouldn't that be something?
So. And I think that's like why we're also like playing to the cards of like, we're not just gonna fucking run our studio for 3 years. Like we want to run it for a while. Like this should be our last job, not just in the sense that like this is the perfect thing we want to do, but also just like being able to perpetuate such a brand, I think could be very valuable as the market ebbs and flows, right, through bear and bull markets. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So like I wouldn't say this thinking, like this legacy is guiding every decision we make at the studio right now, but it certainly is not a responsibility, but like an environmental effect that we want to be very cognizant of as creators in this market. So I feel like that's where we want to go, and we have certainly done enough interviews along the way with other creators and like what is the future for the studio? I was like, well, we don't even know, to be honest. And if we do know, I think that's also us not doing exactly what we want to be doing as a studio. So
well, that's awesome. Well, on that note, maybe we wrap it up here. I feel like there's some great insights, Dave. Really appreciate taking the time to share your thoughts here.
No, I mean, I always enjoy chatting with you and Nash, and I always feel like I have to challenge my own thinking whenever I do so. So power to that, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I love seeing that too, getting the wheels turning, and especially when it's coming to some of these newer projects we're working on. It's really cool just to see how things are naturally changing based on intuition, it seems, right? Because there's really no way to logically deduce how we're supposed to behave. Let us figure out by instinct, right? And so it's a great process.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna be talking about ABF a lot more, I think, in the coming weeks. And I hope that this process also allows people to see just like the challenges of bringing a project like that to life. And the challenges aren't like, how do you write Solidity code or how do you build a dApp? It's like more, okay, we have a very complex multivariate community onboarding plan that we've got to figure out. The sequencing, the planning, the communication of, and that isn't like a hard skill. That's very intuition driven. So
yeah.
Well,
awesome. Yeah, that was a great happy hour plus with Proof of Beauty. If anybody made it this far into the podcast, leave a comment, let us know. As always, we should start encouraging people to share, like our pod. We're gonna spruce up the quality, get this out. But right now, I mean, this is so information rich, Dave. Like people who are listening to the last 3 episodes are gonna have a really great insight where Proof of Beauty is going. And I mean, if there are people out there who are trying to get into, the next best thing, I feel like, we're just a good project to keep your eyes on, and ABF especially has some of those really interesting original qualities of an original NFT project. So it's cool. And I hope that people are going to get the value out of this that they could.
Yeah. You're a poet with the words. So cool. We'll call it a day today here.
Yeah, we'll call it a day. To end this, do you do you have the end button on your side, or do we just both leave the studio and see what happens?
That's a great question. I don't see any of these buttons.
Yeah, because Ash took off and I'm messaging him. I'm like, hey, how do we end this? He's like, you should be able to just leave. I'm like, I don't think so.
It's just gonna be like an empty. Oh man, it's gonna be curious.
I'm gonna send him a message, say we're trying to sign off.
We're trying to stop the podcast. Oh man. I feel like people don't know this is like we I joke, but we do embrace the jank. Like I look at how many of our dApps that we have put together and gone to market with. It's like with two people, we can't perfectly plan things in like these kind of podcasts, like shenanigans, like this rough cut version of us doing shit. Welcome to the daily life of what I do. Like,
no doubt.
Things are just duct taped together. We literally MacGyver all of our projects together. So,
well, why don't we both just try leaving the studio here, and then I'll see what happens to the YouTube broadcast.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna leave.
Awesome. All right. Well, good talking to you, Dave.
All right.